I'd like to start by acknowledging the First Nations owners of this land, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded here or anywhere in the country. And we've all got a lot of work to do to continue the work for truth-telling, for treaties, for voice, for reparations and for healing. And that is indeed something that we all need to keep doing. And I just said a big warm hello to Auntie Violet as she exited. Thanks to the Australia Institute for hosting yet another challenging and Overton window shifting event. Love that that's the role that you're playing. And thank you for bringing the dangerous ideas. We don't think they're dangerous, but nor do you. So well done in bringing them. Now, housing, food, climate, education, healthcare, day in and day out, working people are struggling to manage the cost of the things that they need to survive, while corporate profits and bank balances of billionaires soar. It feels unfair because it is. Inequality in Australia is the driving force behind the concurrent existential crises that we face, and the gap just keeps getting bigger. Australia is an incredibly wealthy country, the fifth wealthiest country in the world, in fact. But if you ask most people, they would struggle to believe that. Not while first home buyers spend their Saturdays getting outbid by property investors and renters line the block for a chance to spend more than half of their weekly income just to keep a roof over their heads. How can people trust their government when every day that people struggle to keep a roof over their heads, the government, that same government, will happily hand out over the next decade $181 billion in negative gearing and capital gains discounts to people with 5, 10, 50 houses? Neither major party is prepared to do anything to address housing unaffordability. And in fact, every intervention in housing has driven up the cost of having a roof over your heads. It's unfair, but it's not by accident, it's by design. At the height of the inflation crisis, we saw Coles and Woolies and their profits soar by record levels of 17% and 14% respectively, while the rest of us were paying more than we ever had at the checkout. Unconstrained price gouging and the abject lack of competition meant that they could just pass all their costs through to us. Successive governments have proven that the major parties simply do not have the guts to stand up to big corporations and say enough is enough. To do that, they'd need to start taxing big corporations and those with extreme wealth more fairly. They would need to generate, as the name of this summit suggests, revenue. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and you've all got the numbers in your heads, and you've got the graphs, and you've got the data, and thanks to your work, I've got the graphs too. But the problem is, we're not winning the argument. This Labor government, with a whole term under its belt and a thumping majority in the House of Reps, remains steadfast in maintaining the status quo. The Prime Minister's intervention to further weaken an already meek tax proposed on ultra-wealthy superannuation balances is not a good omen. This back down is another in a long line of examples of just how badly inequality is baked into our system, and sadly, how easily this Labor government caves in the face of opposition from big business and their wealthy donors. The superannuation system was originally designed to provide a dignified retirement, not a haven for obscene amounts of wealth. The proposed changes mean that a part-time nurse or a full-time electrical apprentice earning $45,000 a year will still pay a higher rate of tax on their take-home pay than someone with $10 million in their self-managed super fund who sells one of their investment properties. It's obscene that any politician could look at those facts, look at the fact that a nurse is paying more tax than a multinational gas company, and say, yeah, all good, no changes needed there. If we actually taxed big corporations and billionaires so that they pay their fair share, we could use that revenue to bring down the cost of living, to reduce inequality, to make life better for nature and for millions of people. But I've got news for you. 1 in 3 big corporations pays zero tax. There are 79 companies that for all 11 years that we've had corporate tax transparency data, 79 companies for all 11 of those years have paid not a single cent in tax. Some are household names like News Corp, Ford, Vodafone or Warner Brothers. Some are the beneficiaries of privatisation like Transurban. But most of them are coal and gas exporters who are profiting off causing the climate crisis. Now, I'm sure you're all aware, thanks to the fantastic campaigning of the Australia Institute, that offshore gas companies pay no royalties, which means that they get the product that they're selling for free. Now, this is a deal that both the Labor and Liberal parties, they're both fine with. And I wonder if it's got anything to do with the fact that since 2001, so for essentially the last 25 years, every single resources minister bar one has left Parliament and gone to work for the resources industry. I wonder if there's just a little coincidence there. Gas companies treat tax as optional, and they leave the rest of us with the clean-up bill for the natural disasters that they are turbocharging. The PRRT, the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax, is an elaborate con that gas companies are readily happy to game. The ACTU recently argued that it should be replaced with a 25% levy on the value of their exports. Now, a measure like that could produce an enormous amount of revenue to help fund the services that we all need. But that's all possible. Reform suggestions like that are all possible, but it's the government that's choosing not to do it. The major parties team up over decades to hand out $60 billion of public money in fossil fuel subsidies to a tiny handful of massive mining companies. And we've seen the major parties not blink an eye at committing $375 billion of taxpayer money to AUKUS. Now, do I have another 10 minutes to talk about the AUKUS deal? Sadly, no. But what a dud deal. We're hitching our wagon to increasingly erratic and fundamentally self-interested America for nuclear submarines that we might never receive. Let's save that $375 billion and have an independent foreign policy that will keep us safe. And let's work not for a return to the status quo, but for change. It's up to everyone in this room to make politicians' jobs depend on doing something to fix the vast inequality in our economy, because they do not fear our graphs and they do not fear our think pieces. They fear losing their seats. We know that Labor can talk the talk, from the Prime Minister down to the backbench. They're all so concerned and really wish that they could stop the housing crisis. They really wish that they could ban gambling ads or put dental into Medicare or raise job seeker. If only they were the government. They could do those things, but they're not. And when it comes to real reform that would make people's lives better, they're missing in action. In the case of the housing crisis, they're actively making the problem worse with the 5% deposit that is simply pushing up house prices and bank profits. Despite the Labor Party's supposed political philosophy, they are serving big corporations and billionaires. Big corporations and billionaires know that the rules are stacked in their favour and they are hell-bent on keeping it that way. They've successfully built an echo chamber that reverberates with lies like, it's cheaper if you privatise it, or, oh, it's not the government's job to build houses, or coal and gas companies, they can't afford to pay taxes. Those of us who tell the truth about the winners and losers from economic inequality are drowned out by that echo chamber. But politicians should not answer to big corporations. They should answer to the people. And we are not powerless here. There is hope. This election, like the last, saw the lowest vote share for the big parties. And that's not surprising because their cowardly incrementalism helps no one but themselves and their big donors and big corporations. Our job, all of us in this room, is to agitate for the type of social and economic change that we all know that we need, and to help build the public's belief that change is possible. Having these conversations here in Parliament is really important, but so is having them with the media, in the community, in a way that helps people believe that it is possible to do more after years of being told to expect less. And I applaud the Australia Institute for their bravery in doing just that. And my ask to everyone here is that the outcome of this summit is not just ideas for change, but the collective determination to demand change. The major parties lack the courage to change anything on their own, lest their big corporate donors stop donating and the many lobbyists that haunt the halls of this place start banging down the cabinet doors. These politicians have forgotten who they work for, and we must all remind them. After going 5 minutes over time at the last summit, I'm being radical here and giving you back 4 minutes of your life for other wonderful discussions, because it is also a sitting day and I'll have to duck off, I'm afraid, because we're actually talking about climate change in the chamber, which is refreshing. But I wish TAI and all of the other speakers, including some great housing advocates, I can see Purple Pingers there, have a fabulous day of big, dangerous ideas, and let's all work together to try and change the system so that it works for us. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching, and a very special thank you to all our supporters who help keep us running. We're not funded by political parties or fossil fuel companies or government, but by people like you who know the importance of evidence-based research in shaping the critical decisions facing Australia. If you'd like to support us to continue exposing inconvenient truths, challenging vested interests, and explaining the big issues in plain English, please consider making a tax-deductible contribution today. Visit our website australiainstitute.org.au to find out more.